and welcome to the 11th session of the storytelling series by the regional level guides of Western region organized by India Tourism Mumbai. Today our story takes a very different plot. Till now we have been listening to stories about destinations, tourist places, monuments, etc. Today we'll be treated to something new and different which again is part of a tourist experience. Yes, today our story is about textiles of Gujarat. The beauty of luxurious silks, weaves, prints, patchwork, embroidery work, stitch work, and the vibrant colors and patterns of Gujarat are things of legend from time immemorial. Textiles are regarded as symbols of identity, culture, and tradition of various regions of our country. They exemplify the richness and diversity of our culture and also the artistry of the weavers. These unique creations of traditional weaving by hand is a part of our country's cultural ethos. They are environment friendly and a feasible way to make a living and also a source of living, especially for those in rural areas of our country and more so in Gujarat. In fact, if you look at our history is full of many quests that have been made for these treasures. Merchants from many distant shores have dared the dangers of the sea for Indian cloth and designs as much as for spices. To dive into this opulent world is to be lost forever. In fact, during my recent visit to Bhuj, I had an opportunity to visit the Bhujaudi village, which is again a village of weavers, an amazing thing. And let's not forget the Ajrakpur prints again, the Kutch region. In fact, shopping is also a part of the tourist experience, very much integral to travelers' experience of a region. India, for that matter, and Gujarat more so, is a dream destination for shopaholics, as colors, cultures, and curious by greet every traveler at every turn. Let me tell something about our storyteller today, Mr. Gautam Popat, born in Mumbai. He is an air warrior. He was with Indian Air Force for 20 years. And being in Air Force, it gave him a chance to travel across India. And in fact, he had served in the most difficult terrain of the Siachen Glacier for almost 2 years. Due to his keen interest in tourism and dedication, he became a regional level guide for the Western region. And since then, he has been working as a freelance tour guide. He has worked as a tour guide and tour leader for almost all the leading DMCs in India and also led many international special interest tours. Gautam has traveled extensively with Christine Manfield, the judge of the MasterChef Australia, and he received the Best Traveler Award in 2016 from La Vida Travel Cafe. In fact, he also was decorated by the Indian Air Force. He was commanded by the Chief of Air Staff in 1998 and also by the Air Officer commanding Western Air Command in 2001. And besides tour guiding, Mr. Gautam also is a visiting faculty at the CZ Patel College of Travel and Tourism Management, Vidyan Nagar, Anand, and Charutar College of Management Studies. And due to his keen interest in textiles, he has been collecting pieces of textiles from around the globe and has around 300 pieces in his personal collection. This is amazing, and so we have a right person to tell us the story about textiles of Gujarat. So all listeners who are tuned in today, thank you for all your support. Come join the storytelling series by our regional level guide from Western region, Mr. Gautam Popat. Mr. Popat, come spin your yarn and weave a beautiful tapestry of your knowledge and experience in the world of traditional textiles to Gujarat. Over to you, Mr. Popat. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, sir, for this introduction and for giving me this opportunity to talk about and share my knowledge about the textiles and embroideries of Gujarat. We have been listening about textiles, and it has been part of the Indian legacy, I would say, since the time of the Indus Valley civilization. India has got a very rich heritage And the origin of textile, as I said, we can trace it back to the Indus Valley civilization, where people used homespun cotton for weaving their fabric. Some of the sites of the Indus Valley civilization that were excavated, especially like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, the archaeologists have found traces of yarn. They have found traces of threads that were tied to the beads to make the necklaces. And one of the major findings is the statue, what they say could have been of a priest or of a king in the site of Mohenjo-daro, which is in present-day Pakistan. And he's wearing a shawl which has got floral patterns on it. And those patterns, they are known as kakar or cloud pattern. And even today, we can see these kind of patterns being embroidered or even block printed on the Ajrak fabric. It is not only the excavated sites at Dholavira where we find the traces of this, there are also a finding of a fragment of fabric in Egypt. And this fabric was actually russet and modern dyed fabric. It was a cotton fabric. And this tells us how rich the textile legacy of India is. The traditional textile industry of India, which we call handloom, actually saw a decline during the 19th century. And it was during the colonial regime, rather, not the 19th century, but the colonial regime that we saw this downfall. And the modern textile industries took birth in India in the early 19th century. As far as my record goes, as far as my knowledge, the first textile mill that was set up in India was in Calcutta in 1818. And the textile industry in its present international trade was because of the first textile mill that was set up in Mumbai. But before that, we also had the trade going on at the time of the Indus Valley civilization uh, with Mesopotamia. You can see the Lothal, which was one of the biggest ports during that time. And this is the trade route where the trade was carried out. And it was even textiles and other beadwork, copper articles, and other things that were exported from here. So Bombay was again, which gave a landmark, and we started exporting textiles from here. And then in 1819, Ahmedabad, the first textile mill was set up. And Ahmedabad was also known as the Manchester of the East during the British era. And now it is called the denim capital of India because of the Irwin Textile Mills, which is manufacturing the maximum denim fabrics in India. So from the Indus Valley civilization to the modern day denim fabric, let's begin the story of textiles in Gujarat. And let me take you on a journey to show you not only the various art, craft, and embroideries of Gujarat, but also to tell you about how the name Ajrak came in, or why it is known as the Ajrak print, or what is Kharad weaving. Apart from the regions that I'm going to talk today, these are some of the embroidery and textile centers of Gujarat. Kutch, which I call it as the Makkah and Medina of textiles. Then we have Surendranagar, which is famous for its weaving and beadwork. Patan for the silk patolas. Ahmedabad again for various textiles. Surat for the textile mills and all the silk fabrics that are woven there, all the different kind of yarns that you get there. Jamnagar for its Bandhani work, Wadwan for the Bandhani work, Bharuch for its weaving, Udwada for where you can see some real very good Parsi embroidery. Today I'm going to take you on a journey from the Kutch region. We'll see various textiles and embroideries of Kutch region. Then I'll take you over to Patan, and from Patan to Surendranagar, and from Surendranagar we'll end our journey in Ahmedabad. Of course, it is not really possible for me to cover all the textiles and embroideries of Gujarat in one webinar because there are so many things that I have to talk and inform and share with you. But I've taken and I've chosen the best that I could from my perspectives, and I'm going to share that and take you on this journey. Before we start the journey, I always say whenever anyone is on a textile tour, we should start with 6F, not the slang, but the first one is the field where the cotton grows. Second is the fiber. From the cotton, you make the fiber. Then you have the fabric. Then you have the factory or the textile mill. Then it's the fashion and foreign. We have been exporting a lot of fabric, a lot of embroidered items overseas. And now during this pandemic time, I would say we should be more vocal for local. So this is the Airakh block printing. You can see the beautiful printing that is being done. And here on this fabric, you see there are three different colors or three different prints. And in Airakh, it is not only one time printing on the fabric, but there are different process, there are different stages where the Airakh printing is done. And in total, we have 15 different stages. Now, Airakh is actually a Persian word which means blue. And because during the process of dyeing, indigo is used quite a lot to get the blue color. That is how it got its name as Airakh. And they also use madder. And Airakh fabric or the Airakh print is not only a fabric that is printed on one side, but the fabric is printed on both the sides, which normally in the screen printing or the other prints, it is not possible, but Airakh is such a fabric which is printed both the sides. Here you can see the beautiful blue and madder patterns that are colors that are being used on this fabric. And the designs are very traditional designs. The motifs are very traditional. You have only geometrical and floral pattern in the Airakh fabric that are used. Before we shift or move towards the block making, Airakh is a fabric which has become very popular now, not only among the locals, but also with the fashion designers. Most of the fashion shows that are held or conducted nowadays, especially in India, they always are using the Airakh fabric. It's become a very popular fabric, and this fabric is block printed in the Kutch region, and you also can find Airakh printing in parts of Rajasthan like Bardmer. You'll be surprised to know some of the Kutchi block printers who are known as Khatris, they migrated to Mumbai, and in Mumbai they also are been doing block printing. If you happen to go towards Masjid Bandar, there's a very big workshop where block printing is done. And the blocks are also made in Mumbai. There are artisans who are staying near Daisar, who are staying near Bhayandar. They migrated from parts of Gujarat, they migrated from parts of Farrukhabad, and they have been making the blocks in Mumbai. So for getting the beautiful Airakh patterns, you need the blocks. And the blocks that are there are made out of wood. Earlier, it was the shisham wood that was used by the block makers to make the blocks, but now they are using teak wood, which is more reliable and more stronger and more long lasting. I'm going to show you the different process of block making. This is the teak block which has been polished and it has been made very smooth. Actually, it's a very long process where the teak wood is cut and it is left in the open for 6 to 8 months for seasoning, what they call. Even in the monsoon, the wood remains out in the open. And after the seasoning is done, it becomes very hard. The block is smoothened, and then they make patterns onto it. And using a hand drill, the extra portion which the wood carvers don't need is taken out. And this is the other stage where you see the drilling has been done, and the design is there, the pattern is there. And it is also uh, the extra wood that is there is taken out. And then we have the other picture where the block is almost ready. And this is the finished block that you can see. So the extra wood that was there, it all has been taken out, and the block is ready. So this is where the ink would, the dye would come onto it, and then you can print it onto the fabric. The other thing that I'm going to talk about is Bandhani or tie and dye. Bandhani is actually a thing that is a craft that is done in Gujarat and Rajasthan. And the word Bandhani originates from the Sanskrit word bandhana, which means to tie. And here you can see the artisan is tying the knots onto the fabric where he doesn't want the color to come onto it. And the area that is left open, that would have the colors onto it. Even the bandana that we tie on the head is actually from the original Sanskrit word, which means bandhana. You can see how tiny the dots are and how it is tied. And you can see the very fine fabric thread that is used for tying the knots. Now, there's a small legend about how the Bandhani originated. It seems that there was a person who was a dyer and he was dyeing the fabric. And they always say that the artisans are very soft hearted. So one of the beggars, he goes and asks some food from the dyer. And the dyer says, I'm busy dyeing my fabric. Can you wait for some time? After I finish my work, then only I'll be able to give you something because I can't leave the dyeing midway. So the beggar says, okay, and he sits down. And where he's sitting, there's a pile of clothes, which is to go for dyeing. He waits for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The dyer is busy dyeing. So he becomes a bit restless. So sitting down, he just ties a few knots onto the fabric and just leaves it there. The dyer finishes his work, goes inside, gets some food for him, and gives it to the beggar, and the beggar goes away. Again, the dyer continues with his dyeing, least realizing that there are knots on the fabric. He dyes them and he dries them. And in the evening, when he's collecting the fabric back, he suddenly feels that there are some knots onto it and he opens them up. And there he sees this beautiful pattern that has been formed. So maybe that is how it is the origin of the Bandhani work that came into. So this is just a legend, what I've heard from the artisans, and they say they have heard it from their father and grandfather and so on. So we can say that this would have been the origin. And it is maybe in Africa where the tie and dye originated, or maybe in Japan where it is also known as shibori. That's a different pattern of tie and dye. So you can see this is the finished product. And in Gujarat, the patterns what we see of tie and dye are very minute dots like pinheads. You also get different patterns, which are bigger knots, but most of the things what we get in Gujarat, the tie and dye, the Bandhani is like very minute pinhead kind of patterns. We have different names of the techniques that are used in Bandhani. It is also known as Laheria in Rajasthan, where they tie the fabric to with threads, and when you open up, you get the pattern of waves. Move further, we can see here this beautiful lady. She belongs to the community of called Ahir, and if you look at her skirt, you can see the floral pattern. This is not print. This is embroidery that has been made. And the blouse, what she is wearing is the tie and dye, the Bandhani fabric. And the Ahirs, they actually migrated along with Lord Krishna when Krishna migrated to Dwarka. In the north, they are known as Yadavs, but in Gujarat, they are known as Ahirs. And they have beautiful, beautiful embroideries, what they do. It's the chain stitch. What the embroidery, what they do is known as chain stitch. You can see they do a lot of mirror work and very minute embroidery. And this is the finished product, the Tree of Life. Very tiny mirrors and very beautiful combination of colors, what they use. This is, I would say, one of my favorite embroideries of Gujarat. This is the ghagra or the skirt and the blouse, which is normally used at the time of weddings. They make very, very beautiful, impressive embroideries at the time for the bride to wear during the wedding ceremony. Coming to the next slide is of the Soda Rajputs. They are actually the people who migrated or they were brought in from the region of Sindh, the Tharparkar region of Sindh, after the 1971 war. And they have been staying in parts of Gujarat, along the Kutch region, and even in parts of of Rajasthan, you can find them. And their embroidery is known as the Suf Embroidery, which is the reverse embroidery, what they do. The fabric, when they have it, they count the weft and the warp, and the embroidery is done from the reverse side. So generally, we find only triangular patterns or rectangle patterns in the Suf embroidery. And there are two different kind of stitches what they do, or the embroidery what they do. It is known, one is known as Suf embroidery, and the other one is known as Kharek. Kharek means the dry dates. In Gujarati, we call the dry dates as Kharek. This is again a very beautiful piece of Suf embroidery that you can see. And I've tried to zoom my camera in so you can see the weft and the warp of the fabric. Actually, this is a handkerchief on which they have done this embroidery. And the count of the thread count on this handkerchief is 60 thread counts per inch. So you need to have a very, very good eyesight and a very steady hand where you can count the weft and the warp and do the perfect embroidery. I've been working closely with some of the artisans to help them to promote their products. And especially during this lockdown, many of them, when they were not able to sell their products, I got them in touch with some of the buyers, some fashion designers, and they started buying things from them. The thing in Gujarat is most of them, they stay in very far-flung villages in the Kutch region, where some of them, they are not even able to converse properly in Hindi. So it's only the local language or the Kutchi language they converse. So it becomes difficult if someone wants to get in touch with them. So we have to be like you need someone who can help you and take you there and show you all those places. and I've been doing this for the last 15 years. Now, the uh, earlier slide where we saw the Suf embroidery, it is very similar to Pulkari because Pulkari also is done from the reverse side, and it's almost the same style what we see in the Suf embroidery. Now, this is Rogan painting, uh, one of the most beautiful kind of painting I've seen on fabric. And this art is almost 300 years old. It came from Persia, and it is done by the Khatri community. And there are few families who are doing this Rogan painting in the Kutch region. Now, Rogan is actually a Persian word which means oil based, and you must have heard of the famous dish Rogan Josh. And here, the oil what they use is actually castor oil, which is boiled and cooled down and till it forms like a gum, and then they mix it with colors or pigments, and then they do this freehand drawing. And Rogan painting has become very popular now, and some of the dignitaries who have received Rogan paintings uh, are quite a lot in number. But I can just tell you that when Mr. Modi visited US, he presented a Rogan painting to Mr. Obama. And now the Rogan artisan, Mr. Gafoor, he has been awarded the award. He's been honored with the Padma Shri Award recently. And if you look at a Rogan painting from far, it looks more like an embroidery, and it takes real time and effort to make this Rogan painting. Now, when we talk about Kutch, the first thing that comes to our mind is the Rabari. And when we look at the Rabaris, we always see them dressed in black uh, costumes, especially the ladies. And they have a beautiful headgear, which is known as a shawl. And the shawl is embroidered with the Rabari stitches on it. And the shawl that the Rabaris wear are made in a village called Bujodi. So the ladies will wear a black shawl, and the men will have a beautiful, colorful uh, white shawl with different patterns or motifs or different color threads which are woven onto it. And the shawl weaving is done in this village called Bujodi, and they are actually the Meghwal who migrated from the Marwar region of Rajasthan almost 600 years ago. And they have settled down in different parts of the Kutch region. And they used to make the shawls. The shawls that the men or the Rabari shepherds, the semi-nomadic community use is known as dhabda. And the ladies wear this black shawl or the headgear. Uh, the shawls that are worn by the Rabaris are all woolen shawls, and it is the local sheep wool that was used for making the black shawls. The black wool was used, and for the men, it was the white wool that was used. So these were like natural colors that the weavers, the Meghwal, Marwada Meghwal weavers, would barter from the Rabaris. The Rabaris would give them the wool, the weavers would weave the shawl and give it back to the Rabari ladies. But nowadays, it's not only the wool that they are using, but it is also uh, the merino wool that they are using. They are using cotton. And here you can see the different shades of cotton that has been dyed in indigo. So we have the first dip in the indigo, the second dip, the third dip. So these are the different shades of indigo that you can prepare by using the cotton. And the same way they do it with wool. And this is the pit loom where they would sit and weave the shawls. And at one go, they weave around about 20 meters of the fabric, and then it is cut into the shawl size. Now, the piece that you see on the screen on the left side is actually a piece of shawl that was woven, a very small one, as a sample. And the weaver, he received a national award for this piece of weaving that he did. And in the backdrop, you can see the different shawls, the modern colors, and the modern patterns that they make there. In the Rabaris, actually, if we see, you can see there are three different names that I have written down: the Debaria, the Kachi, and the Wagadia. These are the three different clans of Rabaris that we find in the Kutch region. And each clan has got its own style of embroidery, its own uniqueness, and their own style of dressing and their jewelries. I think there's some problem with the network. The slide is not moving.
Parul,
Pearl, ma'am, if you can just,
Parul, can you take over, Parul?
Yes, sir.
if you have any questions or anything, I will share my email ID and my phone number later once I finish this presentation.
So we were here.
Okay. Can we have the next slide, please?
Sure, sir. So this one? Gautam, sir, which
Uh,
one?
next one, ma'am. You can just go down to the next slide.
So we were here.
No. Parul, we are not able to see your slides. Presently, we have Mr. Popat's screen only. Can you do the screen sharing?
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
So we finished this slide.
Yeah. So these are, now you can see the hand of the Rabari lady doing the embroidery work and see the tattoos. So this is the Rabari lady from the Debaria clan, and their stitches are very different. And you will be surprised to know there are more, they have recorded more than 24 different kind of chain stitches, which are being done in this region by different communities like the Rabaris, the Ahirs, the Meghwals, the Jat. So if you're traveling to Gujarat and if you're really interested to know more about embroideries or more about the textiles, this is the place where you can come. And we also help you to do workshops. If you want to learn anything, we will conduct workshops for you as well. We'll arrange workshops for you. Can we have the next slide, ma'am? You can see this is a close-up that I've taken. Actually, this is part of a dowry bag, and they have this embroideries on done on these kind of bags. Next slide, please. This is also a part of the dowry bag, and the beautiful patterns that we see and the color combinations that you can see. Very, very bright, vibrant colors. And that is why Gujarat is known as Vibrant Gujarat. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, this is another community called the Meghwals. And here we have two pictures. One is the lady belonging to the Meghwal Marwada clan, and the other one is the Maru Meghwal community. You can see from the attire, so different from each other and so bright and beautiful colors. Can we have the next slide, please? And their embroidery is also very different. They have different color patterns. What they use, the mirrors, what they use are big size mirrors, not the tiny mirrors what the Ahir people are using. And their stitches are also very different. Can we have the next slide, please? You can see the mirrors that are used. Then you have the tiny golden thread that is used, and the floral pattern. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, this is a community which is very, I would say, close community. They are known as Jats, and they migrated from Syria, a village called Alopi in Syria, and they are staying in the Kutch region. And again, they have three clans. They have the Fakirani Jat, they have the Karasia Jat, and the Dhaneta Jat. See the rings, what they wear, and this is the nose ring, and it's connected to it. They have a big kind of a ring clip which they put it up onto the back of the head, and the black thread that you see that goes on from the ring is not hair. Actually, those are very tiny threads that goes and gets attached to the clip there. Can we have the next slide, please? And all the three clans of Jat, they have different stitches, and their embroidery is very unique to the clan. Can we have the next slide, please? This is a part of the yoke, what the Jats wear. And this is actually stitched onto different fabrics, which makes the base of it. And it is almost like, I would say, around about 5 to 6 centimeters thick. And it's really hard, very difficult to even bend, because the kind of mirrors what they use are big triangular mirrors or the shape of a teardrop. So this is the yoke of the Jat ladies when they wear their kaftan. Can we have the next slide, please? You can see another beautiful yoke made by the Jat, and the number of mirrors what they are using here is increased, and they are tiny mirrors again. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, this is a weaving which is known as Kharad weaving, done by the Meghwals, the Marwada Meghwals. And you can see the picture of the loom that I've shown. It's not a pit loom, it's a very primitive loom that they weave on. And they use the camel hair and the sheep hair to weave the carpets. Initially, it was only the belts that were made, which were used to decorate the camels or tie the things up onto the camels, or it was the bags that they would carry on the back of the camel, because the Rabaris and the Ahirs were semi-nomadic people, so they always moved from the Kutch region along with their cattle in search of fodder, and they used camels, so they would always have lots of bags on the back of the camel. And now there are 2 or 3 families who are continuing with this kind of weaving, and they are making carpets. They're using the camel hair, they're using the sheep hair, they're using the wool, they're using cotton, and this person who's doing this weaving, he's got a national award recently. So this is one of the most beautiful weavings of the Kutch region. Very few people have heard about this weaving, and it is known as Kharad weaving. Can we have the next slide, please? You can see they in the carpet they have woven patterns, and these are actually the story that they weave into the carpets. There's a story of a village, and you can see the charkha, the spinning wheel. You can see the camel. You can see the sheep, the houses. Can we have the next slide, please? This is another embroidery known as Aari Embroidery or the cobbler embroidery. And this is again uh, very few people in the Kutch region doing this now. This embroidery, I think, came in from Persia, and it was very popular during the time of the Mughal rules, where they would employ the artisans to embroider on the drapes that were used in the palaces of the Mughals. And with the downfall of the Mughals, this embroidery, it was the Jains who started asking the artisans to do embroidery for them onto the fabric that they would take along with them when they were going to the temples to cover the plate of the offerings that they carry to the temples, or to embroider on the fabric of on the bags or potlis that they carry along with them, in which they have the offerings for the temple. And this is actually a hook that is used, same like the cobbler, what he uses the needle to mend the threads. This is almost a kind of needle, like a hook that is used, and the thread is underneath. So, with the right hand, they would put the insert the thread onto the fabric. It would go, and on the left hand, they have the thread that would be entangled. It's more like a chain stitch, and they have this beautiful embroideries what they do. Uh, just near this bobbin, you can see there's a small stick. That is actually the needle that has been pierced into the fabric and just kept there. Can we have the next slide, please, ma'am? This is the embroidery what they have done, the mochi embroidery or the Aari embroidery, which is known as. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, this is a weaving called Tangaliya Weaving, or the extra weft that is added to the fabric when they are weaving. And this is basically a cotton yarn that you see the artisan is holding in his hand, and they make a small they roll that cotton yarn onto the thread, the weft, and onto the weft, and it is just rolled and made like a bead and woven onto the fabric. So this is an extra thread what they add when they are weaving. This is done by a community called Dangasya, and there are around about only 63 weavers in Gujarat who are doing this kind of weaving. Can we have the next slide, please? You can see how beautiful those threads look onto the weave. Can we have the next slide, please? This is the final product that you see. Now, coming to one of the most beautiful weavings of Gujarat, the double ikat patola sari. Uh, this is the place called, there's a place called Patan, where we have this double ikat patola sari being woven. And it was in the 11th century, the king of Patan invited 700 weavers from a village in Maharashtra to come and settle in Patan and carry on the patola weaving. And today we have only 3 or 4 families who are doing this. And the Salvi families of Patan, they are, I would say, the master craftsmen in the patola weaving. They have got the award of Master Craftsman. They have got the national award, and their work, as per my knowledge and as per me, is the best patola weaving that we can see in Gujarat. They use natural dyes, pure silk, and a patola sari. It takes almost 5.5 to 6 months to weave one sari, or even more, depending on how intricate the designs are. Can we have the next slide, please? You can see the loom here. And the sari of this, for the patola sari, it's the tie and dye technique that is used. The waft and the weft both are tied before the sari, before it's put onto the loom. And onto the left or onto the right of the loom, you can see the woven pattern. This design has been woven, and on the left you can see the tiny dots or the patterns. Even without being woven, you can see the patterns. So this is the speciality of the Patola sari because it's tied and dyed. The weft and the waft has to be synchronized in such a way that the beautiful patterns are formed. You can find the ikat weaving done in different parts of India as well. But the double ikat Patola sari is famous from Patan. You can find weaving done in Andhra Pradesh, even in Orissa. You can find ikat being done in Indonesia, in Australia, even in Japan, and other parts in Uzbekistan as well. If you ever visit Patan, you should visit the Patola Museum at Patan. This is the only private museum of Patola, and they have their collection from almost all the countries where the ikat weaving is done. Can we have the next slide, please? You can see this is one of the weaving that was done, and this design was repeated by the family after 300 years. And they had woven 10 pieces like this. And this is the first time they did this double ikat. Uh, they repeated this pattern, and they had the names of the artisans woven on each thing what they had done. This was actually for some private collections by uh, people around the globe, and it cost, I think, around about 7 or 8 lakhs in present day. It's one of their masterpieces, I would say. Now coming back to our destination in Ahmedabad, where I said where Ahmedabad had the first cotton textile mill. So I've taken you on a journey from 2500 BC, the Indus Valley civilization, to the different weavings, and now we are coming back to the modern textiles in Ahmedabad. So the first cotton textile mill started its production on 30th May 1861, and it was founded by Rao Bahadur Ranchod Lal Chotalal, an entrepreneur of Ahmedabad. And then we had more than 63 textile mills that came up in Ahmedabad, and that is how Ahmedabad was known as the Manchester of the East. Can we have the next slide, please? This is the modern textile mills. We saw how the fabric was woven on the looms, on the pit looms, and on the looms of the double ikat sari. Can we have the next slide, please? And now Ahmedabad, as I said, is known as the denim capital of India. And the Arvind textile mills, they are one of the largest producers of denim. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, it's not only the textile mills or that made Ahmedabad famous, or it's not only that it was called as the Manchester of the East, but there is another art that we have, the painting on the fabric known as Kalamkari. In Gujarat, we call it as Matani Pachedi. These fabrics, the paintings are all dedicated to goddess. And the goddess in Gujarat, what we pray is Amba. And the paintings on this fabric is done by a community called Wagri, and or they are known as Chitaras. They use natural dyes to do this painting. You have the same kind of paintings done in South India as well, which is known as Kalamkari. And in those paintings, the stories or the paintings or the images that we have are of from the mythological stories of Krishna, and you have a lot of images of Krishna on those kind of paintings. But here we have the goddess. Can we have the next slide, please? You can see how intricate it is. It's all freehand drawing, and they just use a small bamboo stick, and it's all the natural dyes that are used, natural colors are used to make this indigo. They have the iron rust, madder. They also use onions. They use turmeric. So these are some of the ingredients. that are used for making this beautiful, beautiful paintings on fabric known as Matani Pachedi or Kalamkari. With this, I come to the end of the storytelling presentation of the textiles of Gujarat. I hope all of you all have enjoyed and like this journey of textiles of Gujarat. I know it's really a very short time where it's difficult to explain in detail or talk about all the textiles of Gujarat. But thank you very much for giving me this time to share my knowledge. And of course, if there is another time, I will definitely explain more in my next webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gautam. In fact, it was an amazing journey and a lot of learning, and the knowledge that you have shared with all of us today. It will be really an eye opener. In fact, we were able to understand how self sufficient our communities have been from age old, producing their own stuff, not only for themselves but also for export. And in fact, I'm told after agriculture, it is the textile industry which employs maximum number of people. So in that sense, today's webinar is also very important, where you have kind of brought in the wonders of Gujarat, which were many of which were unknown, as at least to me, and it's a great learning. In fact, I also have amongst us the chairman of the Indian Association of Tour Operators of Gujarat chapter, Mr. Randhir Singh Waghela, who has joined in. If Mr. Waghela, if you're available, would you like to comment something on how are you promoting textile tours or textile itineraries in Gujarat?
Good evening, sir. First of all, I thank Mr. Popat. You really got me refreshed. 8 months no work, and it was really a refreshing seminar. And also thanks to India Tourism because I am major of seeing all your storytelling of different parts, and they are really interesting and knowledgeable. Regarding the Gujarat Textile, we are doing a regular promotion of the itinerary because we have a lot of traffic coming from Australia, UK, and France also. And in last couple of years, there's a lady named Rosemary Krill. She was a curator with V&A Museum, London. She personally comes with the group and does the textile tours for the Gujarat for week, 9 days, as per the timing the group has. So we are fairly doing very good with these textiles in Gujarat.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Waghela. That's amazing. Mr. Popat, we have some questions also. We have some time. Maybe you could answer. We
Sure,
have
sir.
Maitri who was asked about Ajrak. She's asking, is it a fabric or is it a print that is called Ajrak?
It is the print that is put onto the fabric, the motifs that are there. And because they use Ajrak means actually the indigo in Arabic language, blue. So because of the blue color that is used in the pattern in the fabric for dyeing, and the motifs that are used are all geometrical pattern motifs, and it is a fabric that is printed on both the sides. That is how it is known as Airakh fabric. Like in printing, we have a different kind of print known as the Sanganeri print, or we have the Bagru print. So this is a different kind of print, which is known as the Ajrak print.
Okay. And what is the what they call market access to these weavers? Uh, are they directly selling or they're selling through agencies? How do they kind of do they have a direct market access?
Some of the earlier they used to sell it to the NGOs. The NGOs would ask them to do give the NGOs would give them patterns to revive the old designs that were there, and they would do it in that way. And it was sold through the NGOs. They also had contacts where they would sell it directly, or they would sell it at the trade fairs that were organized by governments in various states, like the Hearts in Delhi and everything. But during the COVID, what happened was they were not able to go anywhere. They were not able to do anything. So some of them they started it selling online, and also like I've been helping many of the artisans like the Ajrak printers. I've been helping the Aari Embroidery people to get in touch with some of my clients. I've been telling them like they are going through bad phase in their life now due to COVID. So many of them they asked if they could buy something from them. So I clicked pictures, I made small video clippings, and I sent it to them. and they liked certain things, so they ordered for it, and we got it made, and we sent it to them. So this is one of the small initiatives that I took during this lockdown.
Great. And also, is this work year round, or is it also seasonal because of the rains and other stuff? Does the season also impact on the work?
The impact of on the artisans is during the monsoon when they don't have the tourists, that is for the sales,
Hmm.
but the work continues
Okay.
because embroidery is always done inside the house. The ladies would be sitting inside the house and doing it, so the
Hmm.
embroidery work continues during their spare time. The block printers, they have their own karkhanas, so they would be printing in those karkhanas or workshops and drying the fabric there. So it's only the sales to the tourist that is affected during the monsoon.
Hmm.
But you have big brands like Fab India and Anoki and everyone who are purchasing the fabrics from here. You have lots of designers who are coming here and they are buying the fabric from them, or they're buying the embroideries from them. So the sale goes on even during the monsoon, but the 4 months they have a very limited sale.
Okay. While you yourself are an encyclopedia, you have brought in so much information about textiles. But if one has to really dig in and study more about the textiles of Gujarat, would you recommend any publications or books that you think would have extensively researched on Gujarat textiles?
So there are a lot of books. In fact, I have a collection of 153 books with me, out of which like 30 books are only related to textiles. You have books written by Rosemary Krill, the curator of Victor and Albert Museum. She has written not only on textiles of Gujarat, but she has written on textiles of India as well. Then we have Yoshika Wada from Japan, who has written book on textiles of Gujarat and textiles of India as well. And there are many other Indian writers who have done. We have a book exclusively on block print, and the book is called Imprints, and this is done by a British author. Then we have Archana Shah, the owner of a boutique in Ahmedabad, and she did a very beautiful book called Sifting Sands. And so there are many books. If anyone wants to know the names of the books or anything, they can get in touch with me, and I can uh, send the names, and I can also recommend some books to them. So if they want to do some research, and I would request all the RLGs, they should specialize into something during their career, either archaeology or textiles or into photography or into art and crafts. So this gives them a weightage, and they can always lead special interest stores, which is the thing that people really look for.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't see any more questions on the chat box. If there is any questions, you can put it there so that we have few more minutes for Mr. Popper to take. Uh, there's one question which has come from Jeshna. She's asking, can you please elaborate the Namda, Mutwa, and Neron embroidery of Kutch region?
Namda is not actually an embroidery. Namda is what is called felt making. And there is only one artisan in Mandvi who does this felt making. And he is been associated with an NGO called Khamir. And you can find him there. His name is Mr. Mansoori. And Namda is also a thing that is very popular in Kashmir. And the Kashmiri Namdas are very much popular.
Right.
Mutwa is the name of a community staying in a village called Dodo in the Bani area. And they do beautiful Mutwa embroidery. And I can show you an example of Mutwa embroidery, which I have with me right in front of me. And here you can see. It's one of the most beautiful embroideries, I would say. Very tiny mirrors, very tiny stitch, and one of the most beautiful embroideries of Gujarat.
Excellent. Right. So
And I think
yes,
she asked something about Naren embroidery, if I'm not
yes,
mistaken. This is also a kind of embroidery that is done by the Meghwal communities. These are all the names of different embroideries that is done in this region. I can show you a beautiful example of the Suf embroidery that I have with me, and it's almost 30-year-old piece. And this is the front side, and I'll show you the reverse side as well. So, any more questions, sir?
what is the main difference between the double ikat Pochampalli Telangana and the double ikat of Patola? And
It's the motifs that are very different in the ikat what we have in Patan, uh, and the way of dyeing the fabric, it's mostly the silk, the Chinese silk that is used in the double ikat patola of cotton, and it's the natural dyes that are used in the patola of cotton. So this is the major difference that we have in the two patolas.
and something about silk industry in Gujarat. Do you have a lot of silk also, or it is primarily on cotton and?
No, we do have a lot of silk fabric being made in Surat. The only the saris that are woven in a village on the outskirts of Gandhinagar called Ridrol, we have the weaving done there, and it's the brocade weaving that is done on those saris. And I can show you a fine example of patola that I have with me. So the motifs you can see are elephant. You have the lady with a pot on her head, parrots. So these are some of the silk products that we have in Gujarat.
Okay, and somebody is asking another question. What is the fabric or textile that you have on your chair behind you?
Uh,
Mm,
they have a real good eye.
yes.
This is the embroidery work of the uh, Kutch region. This is the Ahir work, very old, almost 40-year-old embroidery that I have with me. So
Oh,
if anyone wants to see, and whenever they come to Gujarat or whenever they come to Ahmedabad, please do let me know. I can show them my personal collection as well.
yeah, I'm coming there, Mr. Gautam,
Most
very,
welcome,
very
sir.
soon. And I think I would now like to conclude by thanking you for taking time. From the presentation, we know how much of effort has gone, how much of research has gone, and how seriously you have put in so much of interest in presenting this wonderful story. And I think it has inspired many of us to discover Gujarat and go on a textile trail. And maybe once the borders open and the tourists start coming, maybe we could push this as an important product. And of course, Mr. the tour operators who are there, who will be kind of also uh, supporting us in this. And with this, I would like to conclude. Before conclusion, I want to also thank Parul, our technology partner, who has been silently behind the screen, helping us and making it seamless in organizing our webinars. Thank you, Parul, for the support. And we will join on 23rd. Again, it will be another episode on Gujarat. We have uh, uh, Kavi Rawal, who will be taking us to Modera and other heritage sites of Gujarat. So please join on 23rd at 4 p.m. to listen to Kavi again, another episode of Gujarat. With this, I once again thank everybody who has joined in. Your support really makes the webinar special. With so many viewers, it's also encouraging for the storyteller. And you all have a very good evening. Namaste and thank you. Parul, you can end the.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you.